Ever since I made a video on how to use SQLite databases in your Xamarin Forms application, I got the question, how do I use existing SQLite files, put those in my Xamarin Forms application, and use that with a pre-filled database? And that's exactly what we're going to learn in this video. Now, before we go look at how to implement this thing, let's have a quick peek at the end result, which is, from the outside, it might not be very impressive, but this is a collection view that shows data with first names, last names, and the database ID. And this all comes from a pre-filled SQLite database file that is provided together with the app. So let's check out how to actually implement that. Okay, so here we are in Visual Studio for Mac 2019. I just created a file new Xamarin Forms application. You can see that on the left open in Visual Studio with the XAML of the main page. On the right, you can see it running on the iOS simulator. Now, let's get this out of the way. This also works mostly for .NET MAUI. You need to place your code a little bit differently, maybe, but it works for .NET MAUI as well. It also works with Visual Studio on Windows. It also works on Android and the other targets that you might have. So everything works cross-platform, I promise you. Now, I did do two things already. One is in our solution, you can already see this chinook.db, which is a random file I found on the internet. I will put the link down in the video description below if you want to try this yourself. I added that to my shared project, and what I did is set the build action. So in Visual Studio for Mac, you can right-click, set the build action to embedded resource. If you do this on Visual Studio for Windows, you need to right-click, do properties first, and then you'll have a build action in there as well. You can set that to embedded resource, which basically means we're going to put this file into our project as well as an embedded resource, right? But what we want to do is actually copy that file from our embedded resources somewhere on the file system so that the user can work upon that, or maybe it's back up to some cloud service or whatever. It's just a good idea to get it out of the embedded resources and put it on the file system, but we'll see that in a little bit. Now, the other thing I did is right-click on the shared project, do manage NuGet packages, search for sqlite-net-pcl. So that is the SQLite NuGet package that you want to install to work with SQLite. I already installed that, and I made sure that my Xamarin Forms and Xamarin Essentials packages are updated as well. So that's everything I did. What we want to do now is have a look at this chinook.db. Like I said, this is coming from some random webpage on the internet. I don't recommend you doing that because you don't know what might be in there, basically. So don't do that. Just get your database somewhere else. Maybe there's tools to create your pre-built database right here. But let's check out what's inside of it, because how else do we know what models and that kind of stuff we need to create, right? So let's go here to our view and then say terminal, which brings up the integrated terminal right here. And then I can say, let's see if my Chinook is right here. No, I need to go to existing right here, cd, another subfolder, and here we are. And what's really cool, on macOS, this is built in. On Windows, you might have to install or download a SQLite terminal tool, but for macOS, it's built in. So it's pre-installed on macOS. So you can just do SQLite 3, and you can say, hey, this is SQLite, and I can fire all kinds of queries in here. So that's nice. I can do .open, and I can say here, my chinook.db. and it's going to open that file, and I can check it out with .tables. And you can see all the tables that are in here. So I think there's different types of data in here. Albums, so something about music. Employees, so something about your work. So let's just go with the employees basically, and I can say .scheme, I think, or schema. Oh, here we go. So .schema brings out like the whole database schema for everything and everything, right? So you can see everything that is used to create these tables. But if you want to see it for just one .schema employees, then you can see it for just employees. So we have this employee ID, which is an integer. We have the last name, first name, title, all these kinds of things that you can use with employees. And this is the information that's very useful to us. So for this example, I'm just going to use the employee ID, last name, first name, but I'm sure you'll be able to translate this into other tables and data and columns as well. So let's just keep it at this. This is all I need to know for now. So let's just basically close this terminal. The first thing we want to do is look at how to copy this database file from our embedded resources to our file system. So I'm going to do this in our main page.xaml.cs. You can definitely do it somewhere else depending on your architecture or your needs or whatever. In fact, I'm not sure if the main page constructor is the best place to do this, but this is just sample code. Disclaimer. I'm going to get a little bit of code here from off screen, so don't worry about what I'm pasting in here. I will walk you through it. The first thing we're going to do is with reflection, locate the assembly that we're running from, which is the shared DLL that we're running from. So it's using this introspection extensions, which is something that is built in from system.reflection. So let's add the using at the top of the file right here, so it knows that. And we have to specify here type of app, which is our Xamarin Forms app. It can be any other type in the assembly that we want to load from, but app, is usually there. So let's just pick that one. And then you can see here using stream, we do assembly get manifest resource stream. So we're getting this chinook.db from our resource files, from our embedded resources in this DLL, and we're going to copy that somewhere. Now let me import the stream right here using system.io, and then it should have most of the things. There should be empty quotes right here. We'll get to that. But what's interesting here is that it says existing SQLite DB sample.chinook.db. If you're working with embedded resources, you want to first prefix it with the name of your application, and that is usually also the same as the namespace. Doesn't necessarily have to be, but so just take this namespace or check here your project name, and you will have to input that here. And you can also put it in a subfolder. So if you want to put it in the database subfolder, you can say now database.chinook.db. So every folder that you put here in between, you have to put the dot, folder name, dot, etc., right? I just put it in the root, so it's going to be my project name .chinook.db, and now it can find the file name. This can be a little bit of trial and error, but I'm sure you can figure that out. Now, we have that stream. We're going to copy that to a memory stream, and then we're going to copy that to a file somewhere on our file system. Now, we're going to see where we're going to do that. That's going to be a little bit down the road. So let's put an empty path in here, which will cause a runtime exception. So be sure to update this, but we'll do this for now. So another thing you want to do is maybe put a little to do here. Only do this when app first runs, because else it will override the thing all the time, which is probably not what you want. Maybe it is. And you can use Xamarin Essentials version information with that to see if your application is running for the first time, or maybe the application has been updated. If you want to know more about that, please check out your screen right now. It will pop up on your top right corner. So go check out that one right after this video, of course. So now we have everything to copy our database file to our local file system. Now let's check out how to basically recreate our employee model, right? So what we're going to do is create new folder, and we're going to name that models. And inside of that models, I'm going to add a new class, which is going to be employee, which is going to be our employee model. Now, again, I'm going to copy a little bit here from off screen. So let me just paste in this employee class right here, which has like properties for our employee ID, our last name, our first name, basically all the columns that we just saw in our database file. Now, if you want to use this with SQLite, you probably want to also add here the auto increment and the primary key attribute, so that it knows that this is the primary key and it auto increments. Another interesting thing is that the table was called employees with an S at the end. Now, if we're going to name this class employee, which I find better, but totally up to you, then it's not going to find the existing table. So you either need to name it employees, or what you could do is add the little table attribute here, and you can specify a name and other properties as well. But we're just after the name, so I'm going to name this employees, and now it's going to find it as the employees table in the database. So now that we have all this set up, it's time to access our database actually. So let's go into our solution. I'm going to again add a new folder. I'm going to name this data. You can call it whatever you want. And I'm going to add a new class, which is going to be our employee repository. So this is kind of like, repository. Usually this is kind of like the repository pattern, which is a design pattern to access your database. So I'm going to use this. Well, actually, I'm just going to implement one method for this. So I'm going to again paste in some stuff here. You can see here that I have this private field for my SQLite connection, which is the connection to our actual database file. And then I have this public static string db path. So I've put this in here like this as a static, so that I have a single point where I have this db path, and I don't have to construct this path over and over again, because that will leave room for error, right? Then I will have two different paths, and it will be reading and writing it to do different things. That's not what you want. So what this does, it will find the path that's combined with the environment get folder path. This is just helper methods from the .NET framework, which will get you paths to, like, these paths can be different whether you're running on Android or Windows or iOS, right? So this will determine the same path depending on the platform that you're running on without having to hard code all these paths. So it will get the environment special folder local application data. You should check out the documentation what it is exactly, but I think this is like your local application data folder on each platform that will also be backed up to your cloud provider if that's what you want. So it's all good. Now we have this little constructor here which will create a SQLite connection to our DB path. So we only have to point at our DB file and that will be our SQLite connection. So let me add the SQLite models thing here. So the employees and of course a list right here. And that should be everything to set up for our repository here. So I only have implemented this method for like listing. So this will just list everything that is in our employee table. Of course, you can add here like add employee, add and create employee is probably the same thing. Update, delete, you can add all your things here, right? So that's definitely something that you want to do, but I just want to pull them out right now for this existing database. So this is all that I should be doing here. So that's done too. Now let's go back actually to my main page.xaml.cs. So I can here, write this database file to the right path. So I can say now employee repository, which is a hard word. I keep typing it wrongly. Repository dot, oops, not knowing it. So let's add the using existing SQLite DB sample.data .db path. So now it's going to end up in the same path. So this is all done as well. And actually we're going to need a little bit of UI right now so that it also can show our data, right? So let's go to our main page.xaml. I'm going to actually update this title right first. So let's name this existing SQLite DB sample. And I'm going to throw out all the labels right here. And what I'm going to do, again, it's just a boring copy and paste video. I'm going to copy this collection view in here. So I have this collection view, which is great for showing data. I'm binding this to an item source of employees. So that's going to be a collection of employees. We'll implement that in a little bit. And I'm going to do this item template where I have a stack layout with 3 labels, the first name, the last name, and the employee ID. So that's all the data that we're getting out of the employee, right? So that's maybe important to note. You don't have to get all the fields out of there. If you just need these 3 fields, specify those in your model, and that's the ones that will get out of there. If you need more later on, just add those and it will retrieve those from you as well. Or you can write your own magic string SQL queries if that's what you want, of course, but I wouldn't recommend that. So there's all this. Now go back to our main page.xaml.cs because I'm only copying the database file here. What I still want to be doing here is now add a observable collection. So let's just basically add that here to the top. Public observable collection of employee. Let's add all the usings for the models and this observable collection as well. And this is going to be employees. Get set has to be a property. Let's initialize a new one so that it's always there. So now I have this one. This is like my backing collection for the employees here. So my data binding right here, it will read all the employees from that. And now we actually have to fill this thing, right? So what we're going to do now is say employee repository is, repository, let's give it a name, is new employee repository. And from there, what we're going to do for each employee in repository.list, because that got all of our employees, right? We're going to do employees.add employee. And it's going to add them to our observable collection one by one. Now, one thing we should not forget is set the binding context here. So binding context is this, because this basically says like, hey, this main page is going to act as the binding context. So if you're here reading our employees collection, you should do that from our main page object right here. So it's going to reach out to this employees. And then inside of this collection in this data template is going to look into one of the employees, and then it's going to look at the properties, first name, last name, employee ID. I have a playlist full on how to work with data Databinding Xamarin Forms. It should pop up on your screen right now, so go check that out. Let me quickly stop and restart the application. And actually, let me just put a breakpoint in here so you can see a little bit what is going on. And what we should see is that we are going to walk through here. We're going to load this from our embedded resources in the assembly, and our stream should have a length, which is basically like how big our DB file is. From there, we're going to copy that file, and whenever we do, you can see in the repository.list that our employees are there being read from our database file now, and we can show them in this list. So let's wait for our application to be deployed so we can actually see if that is what happens. So here we are, it's coming up, and well, here's our breakpoint. So let's see if it can find the assembly. It does that. Let's see if it can get our stream. So in our stream, we can see base length and capacity, which is, I don't know, 800 kilobytes, 80, something like that. So it has actually found something. Now it's going to put that in a memory stream, and it's going to copy that file to our DB path. So it seems that it's done that successfully. Now we're going to create that repository. We're going to loop through it, and it's going inside of it. So you can see it actually adds employees right here. So if I just click play here, if I just click run, it will continue, and we should see a list of actual employees being loaded in our collection view. So that is how you use a existing SQLite database file inside of Xamarin Forms or .NET MAUI. So now you've learned how to take an existing SQLite DB file and connect that in your Xamarin Forms and .NET MAUI application. I hope this video was useful to you. A quick shout out to my latest member on the senior developer tier. Thank you so much, Craig Schlamann. I'm not sure where you're from. It sounds a little bit, I don't know, German, Nordic maybe. But thank you so much for becoming a senior developer. If you want to know what the memberships on my channel are all about, please check out the join button down below. If you're new here on this channel, thank you so much for watching. Please check if the subscribe button is lit up so you're subscribed to my channel and all the information will come to you. Did you like this video? Please click the like button as well. And maybe you want to learn more about SQLite. Well, I got a video on how to get started with all the SQLite bits right here. Maybe you want to know more about that databinding stuff I have been talking about, then check out this playlist. And of course, if you want to subscribe to my channel, like I just mentioned, check out this button right here. See you next time.